The Battle of Hastings in 1066, without any doubt the most important battle ever fought on English soil and arguably the most historically significant in English history. Duke William and King Harold would meet and decide England's future in a welter of bloodshed. The battle's name is just one of a barrel of mysteries surrounding that fateful day. The biggest by far was why the battle was even fought at all. William was desperate for it. He had taken his army across the Channel and was now effectively stranded. He had thousands of men and horses who would go through food, water and forage at a prodigious rate, and could not be resupplied or reinforced from back home in Normandy.
Time was William's greatest enemy. It was late in the season and he needed a single, decisive battle and victory to give him a chance at the crown. For Harold the opposite was true. Time was on the Anglo-Saxon side.
Almost immediately on landing, his men were burning, looting and pillaging the local area, as the Bayeux tapestry illustrates, stripping them of the supplies his men needed and condemning the Sussex villagers to destitution and starvation in the coming winter. There was no Humber estuary on the south coast, no route way into the English heartlands. Harold could have screened William, pinning him against the sea and simply waited him out, starving his army into submission and a humiliating withdrawal. Instead he went straight at William. Covering around 40 miles a day, he arrived in London with his carles on the evening of the 6th of October. His messengers had done their job, and men from the select FWDS across the southeast, the lower Midlands and even the southwest were starting to appear to swell the king's army. The headstrong monarch tarried for less than a week before he decided enough was enough and it was time to face his rival.
These men were still recovering from the cataclysm on the Derwent and the loss there of as many as half of their friends and comrades, while the rest of the army were select FYRD men predominantly from the southern shires, well equipped and with some experience, but untried and facing the sternest of tests.
The Norman infantry were taking heavy losses and the English line was holding steady. As Guy recounted, they bravely stood and repulsed those who were engaging them at close quarters, so William decided to throw his cavalry into the fight to try and decide the battle quickly. With the slope against them, the heavy horses could not achieve a gallop, and by the time they reached the struggling lines of warriors, they were probably doing no more than a fast canter. As horses fell, kicking and whinnying in agony, the Franco-Norman assault began to falter. Poitiers again, they began to drive them back and almost the whole of Duke William's battle line fell back. Men fell back from the fury of the Saxon defence, and on the left Count Alan's Bretons, Poitevins and Angevins turned and ran. This left William's central division exposed on its flank, and the English came forward, ripping into the Normans. The Franco-Norman army was in danger of disintegrating, and in the chaos the cry went up that Duke William himself had been killed and near panic set in. Standing in his saddle, the Duke pulled off his helmet so his men could see him.
While some men streamed by him, the Duke's bravery caused many of his own men to stop fleeing and rally on their leader. The Hastings battle legend taught to every school child is that this retreat was actually a deliberate Norman trick to lure the inexperienced English militiamen out from behind their protective shield wall and into a trap.
The chroniclers and the Bayeux tapestry are clear on this. This first Norman flight was real. It was true that the tactic of the feigned flight was something of a Norman speciality, and one they employed back in France, and it would be used at Hastings, but not at this point in the day. This flight was no ruse, but was caused by English skill at arms and the casualties wrought by that skill. The Bretons in particular lost a great deal of men. The tapestry has cavalrymen tumbling over their horses' heads, in the marshland and among the uneven ground on the western side of the slope. The bigger question is whether this English sally was a wild pursuit born of inexperience, or a deliberate counterattack ordered by the king or one of his chief lieutenants. If it was the latter, then it was the only time during the entire battle that the English deviated from their stand and fight strategy. Whether deliberate or not, it ended in disaster for the English. William had steadied his men and now he turned them loose on the pursuing Saxons. Finding their courage again, the Normans drove into the flank of the pursuing English on the left. In open ground, Without the protection of the shield wall, the charging Englishmen were doomed. The English were beaten. The Normans pressed home their attack, determined to achieve complete victory. Standing in the circle with their elder brother the king, the Earls Lefwine and Duarth were cut down and killed. Harold may or may not have been hit in the eye by a Norman arrow, but whatever the truth of that popular belief, inspired by the Bayeux tapestry, he was killed in that final all-out attack and his body was hacked to pieces. With his death, the Battle of Hastings was lost, as was Anglo-Saxon England.